Hi guys, it's Debbie. The months leading up to the Oscars are now over and we finally have our winners. A couple of weeks ago I uploaded another video which I spoke about who I thought was going to win, so my predictions, and in the end I didn't guess half of the winners. So today let's take a look at who actually was called on stage. And if you would prefer a separate and more detailed review of each film, check out the description box below. Okay, so this year's winner for Best Picture is Moonlight, and I'm really pleased with the Academy's choice because this film is absolutely amazing. It's visually stunning, it's deep in its simplicity, it optimizes the use of colour using different shades to convey various emotions. It has an awesome cast starting from the trio of Alex Hibbert, Ashton Sanders and Trevante Rhodes, which portrayed Chiron, giving us a beautiful and heartbreaking portrayal of a person left to his own devices, grown with no love, no acceptance, no understanding, no one to talk to, and a lot of questions about himself. Also, Mahershala Ali, which portrays drug dealer Juan in the film, received an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. I personally don't really agree with this choice. I understand that Juan was a fundamental character. He is a man devastated by the consequences of his life choices, which raises little Chiron in an environment in which his mother is the real enemy, but which also in the end never makes the choice of abandoning his life of criminality. But take a look at Lucas Hedges in Manchester by the Sea, which beautifully completed Casey Affleck's performance. He gave us an extremely realistic image of a teenager whose life falls to pieces one day, but which has to keep on moving on until eventually breaking down, with one of the most realistic depictions of a panic attack I've ever seen. He was anger and despair, he was the rebellious teen, but also the struggling son. He was a reluctant nephew, but also a good friend. Moonlight and Manchester by the Sea then respectively won the Academy Awards for Best Adapted Screenplay from Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue by Taryn Alvin McCraney, and Best Original Screenplay. As I said in my other video, I was hoping and expecting these results because these two movies are absolute masterpieces and I would highly recommend watching them. Casey Affleck also won Best Actor, and I think this was the most expected and deserved award of this year because his portrayal of Lee Chandler in Manchester by the Sea was completely spot on. Casey Affleck portrayed a quiet, humble, down-to-earth handyman with a dark past which stops him from taking on big responsibilities, such as accepting the fact that he will have to be his nephew's legal guardian. He deals with grief in a particular way, a detached manner, coldly handling all the details concerning a relative's death. But in reality, this is only a mask covering a jumble of dark emotions, which spill out particularly in a scene with his ex-wife Randy, portrayed by Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but she was surpassed by Viola Davis for her role in Fences. I did find Michelle Williams acting very good in Manchester by the Sea. She perfectly conveyed the attempt at trying to repress certain emotions, memories and events while still acknowledging the fact that the past can't be erased. But I still think there wasn't enough to actually award her. I was hoping the award would go to Naomi Harris for her portrayal of a drug addict mother, an abusive mother in Moonlight, but I'm also pleased with Viola Davis's award. But wait a minute, what about La La Land, which everybody was talking about? I've always said that La La Land was a great movie, a great but overrated movie, and the Academy finally proved that it could possibly be so, because after 14 nominations, which actually included Ryan Gosling as Best Actor, it won less than half. It received awards for Best Original Score and Best Original Song for City of Stars, which I had considered in my predictions, Best Cinematography, which could have been a struggle with Moonlight, Best Director for Damien Chazelle, and Best Production Design. I could agree with these awards. But then Emma Stone won Best Actress for her portrayal of Mia in the film, and this is where I absolutely can't agree. I found Emma Stone's performance pretty good in the film, but what about Natalie Portman's transformation, which made her completely become Jacqueline Kennedy? In Jackie, we were nearly feeling uncomfortable in seeing this woman's despair, her grief, knowing the dozens of contrasting feelings and emotions which were running through her mind, and which events such as her husband's death death triggered. Emma Stone's performance was really good, but I don't think it could even be compared with Natalie Portman's portrayal of Jackie. I was also expecting a Best Costume award for Madeleine Fontaine with Jackie, but the award was unexpectedly handed to Colleen Atwood for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which I imagine was a pretty tough job. And I must admit, the team definitely managed to live up to all Potterheads' expectations. I was also expecting a Best Editing award for La La Land, because although Damien Chazelle admitted it was a very tough process trying to include different ranges of feelings, the result was really impressive. But the award was then handed to Hacksaw Ridge, which also won Best Sound Mixing. But one of the most controversial awards of this year was probably Best Makeup and Hairstyling, handed to the team of Suicide Squad. Now I have to admit, I still have to see the other two competitors, so A Man Called Ove and Star Trek Beyond. But concerning Suicide Squad, I've noticed many people have mostly been complaining on the internet because of Harley Quinn and her relatively simple appearance. I personally don't like Suicide Squad. I haven't seen the other two competitors, but for how beautiful Margot Robbie is, the film comprises other dozens of characters such as the Enchantress, El Diablo, Killer Croc, the Joker, all characters whose appearance is pretty tricky to come up with and handle, especially with all the anticipation and criticism surrounding the release of this film. So I can't 100% express myself because I haven't seen the competitors, but before criticising, don't keep in consideration only Harley Quinn. Then who's missing? Best Visual Effects. There were some pretty dangerous competitors such as Rogue One and Doctor Strange, but Jungle Book won the award. At the end of it all, Hidden Figures and Lion didn't win any awards. I wasn't very surprised for Hidden Figures, because if we rule out Octavia Spencer's well-deserved nomination, the film per se didn't have sufficient material to allow it to compete with other extremely wonderful products. I absolutely loved Hidden Figures, but take for example Arrival and try and compare these two films. In my personal opinion, there is a huge gap between the two movies. Arrival in the end was actually only awarded an Oscar for Best Sound Editing, while I was at least expecting a nomination for Amy Adams, along with possibly other nominations and awards. And here we are at the end of it all, after Golden Globes, film festivals, BAFTAs, Oscars. Let me know what you thought about the winners of this year's Oscars ceremony with a comment here below, and make sure to subscribe for many more movie related videos. See you soon, bye!